This whole thing started with a gasp in the darkness. I'm Owen Newcomb, a rancher outside Amarillo, and I was just checking on my prize mare, Duchess, one ordinary night. But when I pushed open the barn door, lantern held high, I heard it, a quiet, terrified sound. I called out, hand on my holster, because you don't stay alive out here by being slow. Then she stepped out from the shadows. A woman. She was dirty, disheveled, but even in that state she was striking. Her eyes, wide and dark, were full of fear, the kind of fear you only see in someone running for their life. "Please," she whispered, her voice raw. "I mean no harm. I just needed to rest." I could see the bruise on her cheek, the way she clutched her left arm. This wasn't some weary traveler looking for a meal. This was a woman in deep trouble. I told her straight, "You're running from something. Let me help." She stiffened right up, said she didn't need charity. I told her my name, Owen Newcomb, and offered her a hot meal and a safe room. That's when she finally gave me a name, Victoria Thornton. But she kept those dark eyes narrowed, asking what I wanted in return. It's 1878. A lone woman had every reason to be suspicious of a lone man. I told her I wanted nothing but the truth when she was ready to give it. Until then, she was welcome. She agreed, just for tonight. I knew whatever she was running from had to be worse than trusting a complete stranger. The walk to the house was quiet, tense. Inside, the kitchen was warm. When she finally ate the stew I reheated, she ate with a desperate hunger that told its own story. In the better light, Victoria was beautiful, with rich auburn hair and a fierce, watchful gaze. She asked why I was helping this complete stranger. I told her how I came back from the war with nothing but nightmares and a bad leg, and how a stranger's kindness saved my life. Maybe it was my turn to pass that kindness along. She softened, just for a moment. But when I showed her the guest room, she gave me the first real shock. "I won't be here when you wake up. I need to keep moving." I understood, but I didn't like it. I left the door unlocked, but I threw out one last line. If she was running from something dangerous, maybe two heads were better than one. I woke before dawn, expecting the guest room to be empty, the front door ajar. But then I smelled coffee. I went downstairs and found her in my kitchen. Victoria. She'd cleaned up, wearing one of my late mother's old dresses. Her hair was brushed and tied back. She turned, spatula in hand, and offered me eggs. "I thought I should earn my keep before leaving," she said simply. Then came the twist. "Besides, I realized I have nowhere else to go right now." She was staying. Just like that, the tension in the house eased, replaced by a cautious calm. She proved to be a capable housekeeper and an excellent cook. I realized how much I'd missed having company. But the story she was running from still hung over us, heavy and unspoken. She finally smiled a genuine smile when I introduced her to Duchess, my mare. She had an eye for horses, a rider's touch. "I had a horse when I was a girl," she admitted, a faraway look in her eyes. "It was a crack in the wall she'd built around herself." I told her she could exercise Duchess while she stayed. She looked desperate to ride, but the weariness returned. She asked again, how long could she stay? I told her, keep her money. Stay as long as she needed. Just help me around the house. I had to clarify. Just housework. I could see the implication, the old fears of a woman alone. I gave her my word as a gentleman. The tension left her shoulders. It was a deal. But as we walked back to the house, I pushed again. "Will you tell me who you're running from, Victoria?" She faltered. "Not today. Maybe not ever." I accepted that, but warned her I'd rather not be caught unprepared if trouble came looking for her. That's when she dropped the chilling warning. She stopped dead and turned to me with a seriousness that made my blood run cold. "If trouble comes looking for me, Mr. Newcomb, Your best course of action would be to hand me over without a fight. She didn't want my kindness repaid with danger, but I looked her straight in the eye and gave her a vow. I don't frighten easy, and I'm not the kind of man to hand over someone who's come to me for protection. The silent battle of wills was real, and she finally looked away, praying it wouldn't come to that. We settled into a rhythm, but the fear was always there, just beneath the surface. Then came Sunday morning. Victoria, dressed in my mother's pale yellow dress, asked to come to church in Amarillo with me. A shocking risk, given she was hiding, but she needed a moment of normal. In town, everyone stared. We were an instant source of gossip. Then Sheriff Wade Rogers, an old war buddy of mine, clapped me on the shoulder. He met Victoria, his eyes curious but kind. She tensed around every new face, but Wade was a good man. I knew he was a man of justice. Driving back, she dropped the real question. Would he help someone in trouble? Someone who might be wanted by another lawman? My hands tightened on the reins. Wade believes in justice, but I asked her straight out. Is that your situation, Victoria? Are you wanted by the law? She looked out over the plains, her profile sharp against the vast Texas sky. Not exactly, she whispered. But the man I'm running from has the law in his pocket where he's from. It was the first solid piece of the puzzle. I promised her Wade would listen, as would I. That night on the porch, watching the sunset, the second wave of the twist broke. She spoke the words I'd been waiting for. I was engaged to be married, back in Missouri. His name was Randall Porter. The family owned half the town, including the bank where her father worked. Her father died, a heart attack, they said. Here's the first big twist. After the funeral, Randall's father, the senior Porter, informed Victoria that her honest father had taken out massive loans that were now due. She knew it wasn't right. Her father never would have borrowed money he couldn't repay. But it was her word against the powerful Porters. They forced her to agree to marry Randall to clear the debt. Randall, she revealed, was a cruel man, hiding his true nature in public. When I told him I was breaking off our engagement, he made it clear that wasn't an option. She shuddered, and I saw her fingers trace the faint, familiar scar on her cheek. The bruise was no accident. She ran, taking only her savings and her mother's jewelry. The truth was coming out, and it was uglier than I first thought. She ended up in my barn, planning to stay just a few hours. I covered her hand with mine. Not everyone wants something from you, Victoria. Some of us just want to help. She looked down at our joined hands and admitted, I'm beginning to believe that might be true. The air between us changed completely. The next morning, the trouble I'd feared arrived. I was mending a fence when Wade Rogers rode up. He dismounted, and my heart hammered against my ribs when he delivered the news. A telegram from Missouri. He's looking for a woman. Victoria Thornton says she's wanted for theft. The description matched. The claim? She stole valuable jewelry and money from her fiancé's family. I stood my ground. And you believe that, Wade? He was too good a friend for that. He told me the reward was unusually large, a huge red flag for a simple theft. He was making inquiries, but until then, he gave me a warning. Get Miss Thornton somewhere less obvious. I told him she was telling the truth, that I'd stake my life on it. Wade just gave me a knowing look, saying he hadn't seen that expression on my face since before the war. He told me to be careful and suggested taking a trip to my uncle's old place near the New Mexico border. A remote hideout. I went straight back to the house. I found Victoria in the garden, and when I told her about the telegram, the color drained from her face. The basket of vegetables dropped, scattering tomatoes across the dirt. He's found me, she whispered. I quickly reassured her. Wade was on our side, checking the Porter's claims. But we had to move. I offered my uncle's place, remote and hard to find. She protested, not wanting to uproot my life. I insisted, "You're not asking, I'm offering." It was a 3-day journey, hard riding. She agreed. Decision made. Tomorrow, at first light. We were running again, but this time, we were running together. That night, she pushed her food around her plate. What if it's never safe to return? What if Randall never gives up? I took her hand. Then we'll figure something else out. Maybe a fresh start somewhere else. California, or even Canada. I realized I had said, "we." Victoria looked up at me, gripping my hand tight. "Thank you for saying we, for making me feel like I'm not alone in this." My heart swelled. "You're not alone, Victoria, not anymore." We didn't say anything else, but the unspoken truth of our connection was stronger than any word. We would face whatever came next. We rode out before dawn, leaving my life, my home, my livelihood behind. The first day was uneventful. Victoria was a natural rider. That night, by the campfire, she asked about my uncle's place. I told her it was just a line shack, remote, for a man who preferred the company of wild horses. She looked into the flames. "And now you're going there because of me, leaving your home." I told her about the kindness of the old man who saved me after the war, the one who taught me how to live again. This was my turn to pass that kindness on. But she knew there was more. No one risks this much for a stranger out of decency alone. I admitted the truth I'd been keeping locked down. Meeting her had woken me up. For years, I'd been just existing, but she'd reminded me what it felt like to care deeply about someone again. She saved me from my struggle to speak it. "I know," she said, her voice soft. "I feel it too." That admission, gentle as it was a turning point. We were no longer two strangers. We were bound. We didn't close the physical gap, but a new door had opened between us. The next morning, the sky darkened. Thunder rumbled. We pushed hard for a trading post about an hour away, hoping to wait out the storm. We reached it just as the heavens opened. Inside, the place was dry, warm, and crowded with other travelers. The grizzled proprietor, Harlan, showed us to a table. I noticed Victoria watching a newcomer, a thin man with a neat beard and expensive clothes. He looked completely out of place. "That man," she whispered, leaning in low. "I've seen him before. In Amarillo. He works for Randall's father. His name is Morris." My blood went ice cold. They'd been tracked. We couldn't leave in the torrential rain. We'd be lost. Our best chance was to hide in the room I'd secured and leave at first light. We finished our meal quickly, feeling Morris's eyes on us as we went up the stairs. In the room, the anxiety was crushing. Victoria paced. "He'll have recognized me." I tried to reason with her. He couldn't be sure, and the storm was our best defense. Then came a quiet knock. "Harlan," I called out. He offered extra blankets, but when he gave them to me, his eye darted past me to Victoria. His manner had changed. Harlan knew, or at least he suspected. He was a man who worked for money. Morris must have offered a reward. We were trapped. We sat on the bed together, taking turns watching the window. She apologized again for bringing this danger to my doorstep. I stopped her. "Don't be," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not, because meeting you has woken me up, Victoria. You've reminded me what it feels like to care about something, someone, deeply again." Her breath hitched. The words hung in the air, charged with unspoken feeling. And then, the unexpected truth, the emotional explosion we'd both been bracing for and running from. Victoria closed the distance and pressed her lips to mine. It was a kiss of fear, hope, and absolute trust. When we pulled back, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you smiled at Duchess," I admitted. She laughed softly. I've wanted you to do that since you offered me shelter without asking anything in return. But I had to be clear. I told her that when this was over, she owed me nothing, not her affection, not her future. She put a finger to my lips. What I feel for you has nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with who you are. I believed her. We settled in, taking turns watching, now a unit, knowing whatever came next. We faced it together. Around 4 a.m. the rain stopped. It was quiet. We moved quickly, silently, preparing to depart. We crept down the stairs. The main room was deserted, except for Harlan asleep behind the counter, a shotgun across his lap. We made it to the stable. I was just helping Victoria mount Duchess when a cold, cultured voice cut through the darkness. Going somewhere. It was Morris, pistol in hand. Behind him, Harlan loomed with his shotgun. We were caught. Morris demanded Victoria come with him, saying her fiancé was worried. Victoria stood her ground. I'm not his fiancé, and that's not my home. I challenged Morris, saying he couldn't just shoot us both. Harlan countered with the chilling truth. Accidents happen all the time in these parts. I stalled, asking Harlan his price, trying to buy time, but Morris scoffed. He gestured with his gun. Now, Miss Thornton, if you'd kindly come with me. Victoria squeezed my arm. She wasn't going back. I knew there was only one move. I shifted my weight, giving a sharp whistle. Thunder, my gelding, reared up violently, a terrifying instant distraction. In the chaos, I shoved Victoria onto Duchess's back and slapped the horse's flank. Ride! I shouted. Duchess bolted. A shot rang out, whistling past my ear. I leaped onto Thunder as he came down from his rear, and we were racing into the darkness. We rode hard for almost an hour, following a creek bed to cover our tracks. We'd escaped by the skin of our teeth, but they were close behind. We pushed our horses relentlessly through the day, heading into the rugged, rocky country near the New Mexico border. By late afternoon, I finally pointed to a narrow canyon. My uncle's place is just beyond that ridge. It was remote, hard to find. It was salvation, but as we approached, there was smoke curling from the chimney. The corral held horses. The place wasn't abandoned. I drew Thunder to a stop. Stay behind me. The cabin door opened, and out stepped a tall, lean man. My fears turned to relief as he smiled. Owen Newcomb, about time you came to check on your inheritance. It was Marcus Webb, my uncle's oldest friend, a horse trainer. We had unexpected help, a new twist in the safety of the valley. I quickly explained our danger, men following, meaning Victoria harm. Marcus didn't hesitate. Let's get you inside, and those horses out of sight. Over dinner, Victoria dropped the biggest bomb yet. She wasn't just running from a forced marriage and abuse. She told Marcus that her father was the bank's chief accountant, and he'd discovered evidence of massive embezzlement by the Porters. I believe they killed him to keep him quiet, she said, her voice shaking. They used the debt fabrication and the forced marriage to ensure any evidence he might have left behind would never come to light. Marcus whistled low. That changed everything. They wouldn't stop looking for her, not if she was a threat to their entire criminal operation. We couldn't run and hide anymore. We had to end this. We needed proof, something solid enough to take to the federal authorities, not the local law the Porters owned. Victoria's eyes went wide. She remembered a strong box buried beneath the rose bush in her old garden in Willow Creek, Missouri. She couldn't open it before she fled. The strong box held the key to everything. That's where we had to go. She thought I was crazy, that Willow Creek would be watched. But I knew it was the only way. I turned to Marcus. We needed help. He didn't hesitate. In 2 weeks, he promised, he'd have a network of contacts set up from here to Missouri to get messages through and keep an eye on Porter's men. Owen and Victoria would travel separately to avoid detection, with Marcus creating a false trail to lead Porter and his men on a wild chase through the territories. As we lay together that night, planning to separate and go back into the lion's den, I turned to her. "Are you sure about this, Victoria? This isn't your fight." She turned to me in the darkness. "It became my fight the moment you walked into my life, Owen. And even if it hadn't, what the Porters are doing is wrong. Someone needs to stop them." She admitted her fear for me, for what might happen if we failed. I pulled her close. "We won't fail. We'll face it together. That's what matters." She tilted her face up and kissed me. No desperation this time, just slow, burning certainty. Our future was irrevocably bound. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus rode out, then returned with the grim news. Porter himself had arrived in Amarillo with a dozen hired guns, tearing my ranch apart looking for us. But there was good news, too. The federal bank examiner was due in Willow Creek in 3 weeks. Perfect timing. If we could get her father's evidence to him, the Porters would be finished. We had to move now. We said our goodbyes. I didn't like the idea of her traveling alone, but she would take a train, disguised as a widow, drawing less attention. I would ride through the territories, keeping to the shadows. I told her I'd abort the plan if anything felt wrong. 2 weeks. We would meet at Widow Jensen's boarding house in Willow Creek. She gave me a brave smile and rode away. My journey was long, tense, and silent. I finally reached the outskirts of Willow Creek 2 days before our rendezvous. Marcus's contact, a grizzled farmer named Jenkins, confirmed the news. Victoria had arrived safely 3 days ago. But the Porters were nervous, working late at the bank every night. They hadn't found the strong box. I spent 2 days scouting the town under the cover of darkness. The Porter mansion was heavily guarded, but Victoria's old home, where the strong box was buried, looked vacant. Finally, the night of our meeting, I tapped 3 times on the back door of the Widow Jensen's boarding house. The door opened instantly. Victoria, dressed in a simple dark dress, her hair tucked under a widow's cap, pulled me inside and into her arms, relieved and joyful. The reunion was a flash of pure happiness in the darkness. She had located her old home. The rosebush was still there. But she'd also discovered a new twist. Randall was already meeting with the bank examiner, trying to charm him before the inspection. We had to move fast. Too risky for her to approach the examiner. Randall might recognize her. I would make the approach. But first, the evidence. Midnight. Dressed in dark clothes, we slipped out. The town was quiet. We moved through the shadows until we reached her old home. She pointed to the large rosebush. I kept watch as Victoria knelt and dug around the roots. After several tense minutes, the trowel struck metal. She found it. We had just reached the back gate when a town watchman called out. "Who's there?" I shoved Victoria into the shadows. "Go, I'll distract him." I stepped out, affecting a drunken stagger, slurring an excuse about looking for a friend. The watchman, impatient, told me to be on my way. I stumbled off, maintaining my drunken persona, until I could circle back to our rendezvous point behind the church. Victoria was waiting, clutching the sack containing the strong box. Back in the safety of the boarding house room, she carefully rotated the dials of the combination lock. Her mother's birthday, her birthday, the day her father proposed. The lock clicked open. Inside, we found leather-bound ledgers, a packet of letters, and bank documents. Victoria's hands trembled as she opened the first ledger. This was the core of the twist, the proof of the ultimate betrayal. Copies of bank transaction records, her father's annotations highlighting discrepancies. Money moved from customer accounts into the Porter's personal holdings. Embezzlement. Thousands over time. Then she turned to the correspondence, letters from her father to the senior porter about accounting irregularities. My father was building a case against them, she said, and they killed him for it. The evidence of fraud was undeniable. We had what we needed. We would approach the bank examiner, Mr. Hawkins, first thing in the morning, before Randall could completely win him over. We found Hawkins alone at breakfast in the hotel dining room. He was annoyed by the interruption, but Victoria spoke with quiet authority. "I am the daughter of Edward Thornton. We have evidence of systematic embezzlement by the Porter family." That caught his attention. I placed the strong box on the table. Hawkins agreed to meet us in his room in 10 minutes. We had cleared the first hurdle. In his room, we laid out the evidence. Hawkins, a man of careful procedure, was visibly shaken by the records. If verified, he said, this was a massive breach of law. I assured him we only asked for a thorough investigation and protection. Hawkins nodded gravely. He would telegraph his superiors immediately. Federal marshals would be here within days to secure the bank. "Your father appears to have been a man of principle," he told Victoria. We returned to the boarding house, a mixture of relief and anxiety. We had set events in motion, but we were now more vulnerable than ever, trapped in a town controlled by the Porters while we waited for the federal intervention. Victoria insisted on staying to see justice served. I agreed, on the condition that we stay completely hidden. 2 tense days passed. Hawkins sent word. The marshals would arrive on Friday's train. But on Thursday evening, I saw them. 2 unfamiliar men watching the boarding house from across the street. Porter's men. We had been discovered. I rushed to Victoria's room. We were trapped. The widow Jensen came to the doorway, her face pale. 4 men were at the front door, all armed. Our only way out was the roof. There was a trapdoor leading to the flat roof and a dangerous 3-foot jump to the milliner's shop next door. It was our only chance. The widow Jensen insisted on creating a distraction, saying we'd left that morning. We climbed through the trapdoor and onto the roof. I went first, clearing the gap. I gestured for Victoria to follow. But just as she prepared to jump, shouts rose from the alley below. "Check the roof! Jensen's lying! They're still here!" Victoria froze. I shouted for her to jump. She ran and leaped. A shot rang out. She cried out in midair, her body twisting. She hit the edge of the milliner's roof and scrambled for purchase, her legs dangling. I lunged, grabbed her arms, and pulled with all my strength. She was screaming in pain as I dragged her fully onto the roof. A bullet had struck her arm. She gasped, "I'm all right. It's just my arm. I can still move." There was no time to think. Shouts and footsteps told us they were on the roof behind us. We kicked open the locked roof access to the milliner's shop and stumbled down the stairs through the dark, cluttered shop, racing toward the back door. We burst into a different alley. The stables were 2 blocks east. We hurried, Victoria leaning heavily on me, her dress stained with blood. Then, rounding a corner, we ran straight into Randall Porter. He was flanked by 2 hired guns, his handsome face twisted with malice. "Well, well," he drawled, his hand moving to his pistol. "The prodigal fiancé returns, and with a new beau." I pushed Victoria behind me. "It's over, Porter. The bank examiner has your father's records. Federal marshals are on their way." Uncertainty flickered across his face, but then it hardened. "Unfortunate timing for you, then. By the time they arrive, you'll both have met with tragic accidents." I knew we were outmatched, but the town was awake, watching from windows. "You really want to murder us in front of half the town, Porter. Even your father's money can't buy that much silence." He hesitated, then twisted the situation. He shouted, "Sheriff, over here! I found the bank robbers!" My heart sank. The town sheriff came running. Randall, smooth and malicious, claimed we had broken into the bank last night and that his guard shot Victoria as they fled. The sheriff looked uncertain, but his hand moved to his gun. "Check the woman," Randall insisted. "She's injured because my guard shot her as they fled the bank." Victoria, weak but determined, protested. "He's lying. We have evidence of the porter's crimes, the bank examiner." "Silence!" Randall snapped. The standoff was about to turn deadly. But then, a new commotion, horses and riders moving at speed down the street. As they drew near, I recognized the badges. U.S. Marshals. They had arrived. Hawkins must have sensed the danger and sent word early. The lead marshal, James Calloway, an imposing figure, reined in his horse, and his cold gaze settled on Randall. "Randall Porter, you're under arrest for bank fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Randall's composure completely shattered as the reality of his situation dawned on him. "This is absurd. On whose authority?" "The United States government," Calloway replied without emotion. He confirmed they had secured the bank and arrested the senior porter. The evidence had held up. The drama was over. Calloway had his deputies take Randall into custody. He turned to us. "Examiner Hawkins mentioned you might be in danger. Looks like he was right." I told him Victoria was shot and needed a doctor. At the doctor's, a marshal with medical training confirmed the bullet went clean through Victoria's upper arm, missed the bone. She would be fine, but she needed rest. As the doctor worked, Calloway confirmed the depth of the betrayal. They had found even more irregularities than Victoria's father had documented. The Porters would face trial in St. Louis and substantial prison sentences. Their evidence was the key that broke the case. Victoria insisted on giving her full statement to Calloway. She was pale, exhausted, but resolute. When she finished, Calloway told her, "Your father would be proud. His work will help restore funds to dozens of families who were victimized." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. That's all he would have wanted. Justice. The next morning, Calloway found me keeping vigil beside Victoria. He told me the final, grim twist. They found correspondence in the senior porter's desk. Letters with the doctor who treated Edward Thornton before his death. Confirmation. "Your father was poisoned," Calloway said, his expression solemn. "Gradually, made to look like heart failure." They had arrested the doctor, who was already confessing. The ultimate crime was confirmed. I decided to wait until Victoria was stronger to tell her. For now, she needed to rest. In the days that followed, Willow Creek experienced a transformation. With the Porters broken, people began to speak out. The true extent of their fraud was uncovered, even greater than Victoria's father had documented. As Victoria recovered, we discussed our future. She mused about staying, reclaiming her father's home, teaching. I asked her if that was what she truly wanted. She was quiet, then turned to me, reaching for my hand. "My future isn't here, Owen. I've known that since the day I fled." She smiled. "It's with you, if you'll have me, on your ranch or somewhere new." I brought her hand to my lips. "I want that too, more than anything. I'd have you now, tomorrow, and every day after." Our decision was made. Victoria's arm was healing. She gave her final statement to the marshal. Before we left, she visited her parents' graves, placing fresh flowers, finally finding closure. "I told them about you," she said when she rejoined me. "About how you found me in your barn that night and changed my life." I smiled. "I think my life changed more than yours." We departed Willow Creek on a bright September morning, riding side by side. Victoria named her new mare Hope. The journey back to Texas was peaceful. We rode openly, without fear, enjoying each other's company. We finally crested the rise overlooking my ranch. Marcus and Wade Rogers were there waiting for us. "Looks like everything's just as we left it," I observed. Victoria smiled, her eyes full of contentment. "Not everything. We're not the same people who left here." "No," I agreed. "We're better." Wade and Marcus welcomed us home, and over dinner we recounted the whole wild story. Wade shook his head. "Hard to believe all that started with finding a young lady hiding in your barn." I found Victoria's hand under the table. "Best thing that ever happened to me." Later, on the porch, watching the sunset, Victoria looked at me. "I want to start planning the wedding," she said. "I don't see any reason to wait." I looked down at her. "Miss Thornton, is that a proposal?" She laughed, free and light. "I suppose it is, Mr. Newcomb. What do you say?" I turned to her fully, taking both her hands. "I say yes, 1,000 times yes, but allow me to do this properly." I lowered myself to one knee. "Victoria Thornton, you are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Her eyes shimmered with happy tears. "Yes, Owen. Nothing would make me happier." We sealed our engagement with a kiss that held all the promise of our future together. We were married 2 months later, in the barn where we first met. Marcus decorated it with wildflowers and lanterns, and Marshall Calloway came all the way from St. Louis to give her away. A simple act of kindness on a dark Texas night had led to this extraordinary, hard-won happiness. The years that followed brought us a son, Edward Samuel, and a daughter, Rose Maria. The ranch prospered. Victoria's father was posthumously recognized for his courage. We finally had the peace, the justice, and the love we both deserved. On cool evenings after the children were asleep, we would sit on the porch, just like we did in those early tense days. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that night?" Victoria asked once, her head resting on my shoulder. I considered it seriously. "I try not to think about it. Some things are just meant to be, I reckon." She smiled. "You're right. Some things are just meant to be." I squeezed her hand as darkness settled over the ranch. "I'm grateful every day that you chose my barn to hide in, Victoria Newcomb." She turned her face up to mine. "And I'm grateful every day that you found me, Cowboy." If you enjoyed this whirlwind story of justice, true love, and the ultimate twist of fate, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell.